In this video, we're going to set up a temporary pacemaker. This is inserted into the femoral vein, which is the access we are going to use in this video so you can best see, but it can also be inserted into the internal jugular vein, preferably the right side, and the brachial vein if you have a radial access and just want to prepare everything in the arm. Depending what brand you are using, some you can just have the temp pacer in a box and some have an entire tray. So if you need to insert this bedside, you can. It includes a little lidocaine vial, ChloraPrep stick, drape, and everything. If your patient is in the lab on the table, like we are today, you won't need most of this, so you quickly want to locate what in that pack you do need. I'm going to take the standalone temp pacer package, remove the plastic, and take the pacer out of the casing. Some, not all of these temp pacers will be balloon tipped. This is what we usually use in the lab, is a balloon tip, but people can order the wrong thing, so you always want to check the box. It will come with a syringe similar to the Swan-Ganz or PA catheter that inflates the balloon, and then some of the syringes are pre-locked and only go to a certain ml to avoid overinflating the balloon. You have two connections, a positive and a negative, like the battery of your car. You'll need cables to attach to these that come separately. First step is check the integrity of the balloon. Just like a swan, inflate and check underwater. If you see bubbles, there's a hole in that balloon and you need to exchange it out for a new one. There's nothing you can do to salvage that. I'm going to quickly burst this balloon with a scalpel for you so you can see what a failed balloon looks like in your saline bowl. This lovely covering is nicknamed a swandum. I'll let you figure out why. There is a side that attaches to the sheath, which you need to be oriented correctly. So when you insert the pacer, it aligns with the sheath hub. It needs to be put on before the temp pacer is inserted into the body because we cannot put it on after. If you forgot, the whole temp pacer needs to be removed. You can add it on and then reinsert, and you know who is probably going to be very frustrated with you. I like to add this on regardless of whether or not we're leaving the temp pacer in, because sometimes you don't know ahead of time and you have to leave it in even though you didn't plan on it. For instance, if we're using it for a TAVR and knocked out the AV node, now they're pacer dependent, or if during a RCA intervention, the patient develops bradycardia that's making them symptomatic, maybe it's from no reflow, which won't necessarily be resolved right away. If your physician gets really frustrated with the sterile covering and you know this, they might instruct you to remove it, but in a rush or emergency, I would go ahead and put it on. The temp pacer does get inserted into the sheath, and once you're a few inches in and clear of your sheath, you can inflate the balloon to float the catheter up to the right atrium. On fluoro, the physician will try and cross the tricuspid valve, landing the temp pacer tip into the right ventricle where we will pace from. And once we are in the proper position, let's secure the pacer. This really takes the job of two people, and this is not urgent, so the sheath is not secure, but I'm just demoing here on my own so you can see. All of this plastic part opens up and that end of the covering caps right onto the sheath hub. Some kits have one that actually screws onto certain compatible sheaths that came in the kit. Here's Kat's not sterile hand pointing out to me how this stretches over the hub. She thought it had a little slit to slip over the sidearm of the sheath, but this model does not, but some of them do. Now on the back on here, there's a screw that tightens down the pacer to avoid it being accidentally pulled out. If you've secured an Impella before, then you've seen this same type of mechanism. And now we are ready to connect to the pacer box. If your patient was very unstable, you can do all of the connection first and worry about the securing later because you need therapy. There are pin connections that are optional for some models, but you can insert them into your connectors and the pins will go to the cables. But just an FYI, your cables can, in some models, just connect directly to the cables on the adapter. Red is positive, there will be a plus sign on your end, and black is negative, there will be a dash or a minus sign on your end. Some cables will come tangled, so make sure you go ahead and unravel it before you connect to the box, because to adjust it at all later, you will have to stop pacing. Here I'll show you how to direct connect without the pins. And if you are the circulator, here is how you work this pacer box. There are different kinds. There's single lead, it's probably half the size of this, and a dual lead like this one, so get familiar with what you have. Turn it on. Hopefully someone in the pre-room checks made sure there was a battery in it and that it was not dead. Scenario 1, let's say we have bradycardia or intermittent heart block. Observe the default settings, 80 beats per minute, an output of 10 MAs for both leads, because remember, MAs is milliamps, by the way. This is a dual lead pacemaker, so it can do both A and V pacing, but we only need V because we are in the right ventricle. If you just want to avoid confusion, turn down the output or MA all the way on the A block and then plug the lead into the V because we're in the right ventricle. So no matter what, all of your settings are just going to that one lead. Once you are plugged in, your settings are live. At the top, you will see pace V and the pacing spikes on the EKG. You will see the mode at the bottom right says VVI, which is V paced, V sensed, and inhibited, which means the pacemaker withholds pacing if it senses intrinsic activity. So if the ventricle is kicking at 80, which is what the heart rate is set at, pacemaker will back off. Now see, the output currently is 10 MAs. Let's work on what we call thresholds. We will turn down the MAs until we lose capture. This is our threshold, the minimum amount of energy needed to elicit a response. Let's say we lost at 0.3 MA. We want to know when we need pacing, it will work, not borderline capture. So we'll turn the MAs up. In this case, we did it to 8, but 2 to 3 times the threshold is fine. This is an emergency, right? So normal permanent pacemakers, you won't be going this high because it's staying in the body forever. This is just an urgent temporary situation. Now we asked the physician, what do you want the rate to be? They wanted 60, so we turned down to 60. If the patient's heart rate drops below 60, the pacemaker takes over. To lock these settings, press the key button and then you can hang it on the IV pole. It's a heavy box, so you want to secure it because if it falls, the pacemaker is coming out with it. And then scenario 2, TAVR and asynchronous pacing. Notice you have a different settings option. The asynchronous option is VOO. When selected, it will say asynchronous in the box, just for confirmation. For TAVR, we select a high heart rate for rapid ventricular pacing to reduce cardiac output and left ventricular movement. So let's say 100 to 120 beats per minute. MA again is defaulted to 10. We plug into the V, pacing starts. And instead of turning on and off pacing from the box, some people just plug in and unplug the cable to control the start and stopping of pacing rapidly. MA will be high at 10 because we are rapid pacing and cannot lose capture even for a second, or we can dislodge the valve. If you want to use the box to stop pacing, press and hold the pause button. During this time, pacing is paused, and when you let go, it resumes. I cannot believe that I have been doing this for 3 to 4 years now. Thank you so much for all of your support and for my YouTube community. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel so that you get all of the updates when we post new videos.